Testing. Call this meeting of the school committee for the city of Lewiston, Maine to order for September the 26th, 2022. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. We'll start with school committee member introductions. Start with Ms. Scott.
Linda Scott, Lewiston City Council Representative.
Probable, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5. Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3. Megan Parks at large.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Jake Lang was superintendent.
Aaron Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Scott.
I'd like to bring forth before we go forward with this agenda that I have serious concerns with our agenda tonight because we did not receive information until late this afternoon. According to the charter of the city of Lewiston, we have to have information for a public meeting out there. On Friday, we received our agenda that had 2 agenda items on it. That was a field trip to Japan and item number 7, which was the possible use of swabs. There was no accompanying information with those 2 agenda items, but they were on an agenda for the public to see. We would be discussing them tonight. It wasn't until 2:06 this afternoon that an amended agenda was sent out with all of these policies and conversations to be had. I personally was working this afternoon, so I haven't even had a chance to really look at everything. And on top of that, I am very concerned about the public not getting any notification that these were to be discussed this evening. I honestly feel that we shouldn't even be discussing them at all tonight. Thank you.
Linda, the items that you're talking about is particularly 10 or 9, 10, and
Yes,
9, 10, and 11 are the ones that are in question.
yes.
I would, say we could certainly postpone this. I do have a meeting next week. We could move these to future agenda items and not deal with them right now. If that's take just a quick head nod from the board.
If I may,
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair,
ahead.
I'm not doing this to cause any contention in any way, but we do not want to be seen as not having that public input. And by our own city charter, it says 2 business days for agenda items to be put out there to people. So I would prefer that we were to postpone those items so that not only do we have a chance to read and see what we're going to be discussing tonight, but that the public understands what we're discussing. And that's why I'm bringing this forth before we even begin.
Yeah, it's not a problem. I seem to think, I think we're all in agreement that we will take items 9, 10, and 11 and move those forward to the October 3rd meeting, which would be the next meeting on the schedule. Is that acceptable to everyone? Yep, Mr. Superintendent.
I know we did have to reschedule the policy subcommittee meeting, which caused some of that delay. But I also know there may be people in the audience that want to speak to those. I don't know what their availability is next week, so I don't know if we want to leave that open during public comment. If anybody wants to say anything about any of these. But that's it.
On agenda items, if we take them off.
Just so they know that it becomes a non-agenda item, so they could speak at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we understand. I just know that I've seen in other meetings where someone gets pulled and then people aren't sure if they get that public input time. And I want to make sure they know that they have that tonight if they wish to use that.
So, Ms. Scott, are you making a motion to set these three items aside, 9, 10, and 11?
Yes, I make the motion that we set aside items 9, 10, and 11 till our next regularly scheduled meeting so that they can be put for public information. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is a second by Ms. Parks? Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. That's 8-0. See where this goes. Ms. Ames.
I have been disappointed lately with the lateness of the material coming to us, so I just wanted to urge that the office gets stuff to us way before an hour or two before the meeting in general. All the supporting materials, I mean. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so just for the public, we have set aside agenda items 8, 9, 9, 10, and 11 as non-agenda items tonight. However, if you are here to speak to that, if you'd like to make comment, that will come in the next item agenda, the public input. You could speak to that, and it would also be available on next Monday night as an agenda item. The next item on the agenda is item 3, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Ms. Parks.
I don't necessarily want it removed, but I just had a question on one item. Should I ask that now or wait?
Go ahead.
On the second page under transfers certified professionals, the second person, it says a transfer from a position at Lewiston High School to a position at Lewiston Middle School to another position at Lewiston Middle School. Is that a typo or is this really 2 transfers in one? What you're looking at is different than what I'm looking at. No. Amended personnel agenda is what I'm looking at, yeah. Yep. Special education rise teacher at Lewiston High School to special education rise teacher at Lewiston Middle School to functional life skills teacher at Lewiston Middle School. All effective on the same date.
Anything else as far as the consent agenda is concerned? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted as presented with that notation from Megan. The next item on the agenda is agenda item number 4. This is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now, which would include those 3 that we just set aside, or on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or student issues should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee, be brief, non-repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Please start by stating your name and address and affiliation with the Lewiston Public Schools. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to the school committee? Gary, were you interested in saying anything? Not today. Okay. That's fine. I think it might get things started if you wanted. Okay, very good. Okay. Fair enough. Anyone else in the audience that would like to make public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public session. Next item on the agenda is to recognize Lewiston Public School staff. Mr. Superintendent.
So we have a couple of staff tonight that really have done incredible work over the last well, many years, to be honest, but increasingly so during the pandemic and since. And I want to start off with someone from our Human Resources Department, and I don't know if Susanna wants to go up to the podium. But Lisa Tyner has worked in various capacities for Lewiston Public Schools, and she's not one to want recognition or ask for recognition, but she is one to absolutely take everything on the list, figure out a way to get it done day after day after day. And so some of the things that Lisa does, just so you know, are FMLA, people's usage of sick days, COVID days, work around anything that has to be outside of the school day or the school office, staff being out, I should say. So in the world of pandemic, her workload multiplied exponentially. And with the new certification processes and more hiring, you have this additional layer of work around onboarding and making sure paperwork's in and everyone who needs insurances and all of those things. So it all runs through the HR office, but the list of tasks that Lisa has is significant. And so we want to take a moment tonight to just recognize her for all of the amazing things that she does that are behind the scenes that makes our teachers and our ed techs and our custodians and others be able to go to work every day and know that they have someone they can call and ask questions to and get the right answer. Someone that is taking care of the paperwork on their end so that their information is accurate and it's aligned to what's actually happening. So that accuracy piece in HR and that trust piece is critical. And Lisa, in all the roles you've had for Lewiston Public Schools, including what you've been doing in HR, we're really very, very appreciative and thank you for all your hard work. It does not go unnoticed. Susanna, do you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the one thing that I can tell you about Lisa is she is our benefits specialist. So she touches the benefits for every single employee that we have in LPS. She does not see those benefits coming through as pieces of paper. Every single one of those is an employee, a person, a family. There's someone attached to that document. So for her, it's not about making sure that she's got her paperwork done by the end of the day. It's about making sure that Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith have their insurance and their families covered. She's very personally involved, sometimes to her detriment. Sometimes I see her sending emails on a Sunday when she's in the office and processing those papers to make sure they get through. But she brings a special human touch to human resources. And I really appreciate that. And I think everyone that works for LPS knows that about you. So thank you very much.
All right, we do have another one. As you know, and we've been providing updates pretty much every meeting and talking well in advance about transportation and how challenging that has been, how we, and I say we, Dawn has worked to work with Hudson staff and their drivers, their routes. And really it's Dawn's routes, and she's coordinating the drivers and trying to figure out what can we cover with what. And it's a collaborative relationship, but without Dawn, it doesn't function the way it has. And while we've had some shortages, I know that she's worked late nights, early mornings. And when we start texting in the 5 o'clock hour about who's going to be at work to drive, who's not, what can't run, she's already made adjustments on the fly to try to make as much happen as possible. So when you when all of you hear from me, it's because I've already been in communication with Dawn and Alyssa and others. So Dawn, can't thank you enough for all the work you've done over the last couple of years and even beyond. If you ask Dawn right now where a street is, she can tell you explicitly exactly where it is. If you ask her what number a house is on that street, she might be able to tell you the house by what it looks like, what number it is. But if I threw a curveball at her and I said 117 Main, I don't even know if that's a real address, she'd be like, that's not a real address. She knows these things. Talk about specialty skills and specialty knowledge, her ability to map that out in a cerebral mental way, and then disseminate that to people who have to coordinate pickups and drop-offs, collapsing a dozen routes now into other routes to make them work. If Dawn wasn't doing the things that she's doing, we would have 10 buses a day not running. 10, maybe more some days, but really it's about her effort to collapse those runs to make it work. And not every driver's happy to hear that Dawn has moved one of their stops or 2 or 10 of them. But they've adapted and they've come to understand that she's doing everything she can to get as many kids to school and home safely every single day. So Dawn, Alyssa, you want to add to that? Dawn, I really can't thank you enough. And Alyssa is our Director of Nutrition and Transportation, and she's going to add.
Good evening. So I went on a conference for nutrition to DC, and that we're shutting down the state. And when I came back, I looked at Dawn, said, let's get some buses on the road. Let's get some vans. Let's get some food moved. And immediately overnight, we had transformed how we did our routing. We bus over 2,000 students daily, and that includes far off down to special education sites that are in southern Maine, homeless students all around the state. And when I look at that, that's over 200 routes we're dealing with daily. And we're looking at how many kids are on the bus. And we get all those weird, wacky calls, you name it. I've probably heard it or seen it on a video with Dawn. And to balance all of that, it's amazing. And I've learned a couple of things from managing the transportation department. And a lot of that comes down to, it's a 1,000,000-piece puzzle. And as much as we move one piece, it affects 10 other pieces down the line. And so you always have to keep moving and jostling, and it's not an easy piece. And sometimes we get to really complicated things where we're like, well, that would work if we moved a whole bus of 70 kids. And you're like, well, that's not a solution. So to have somebody sitting behind there to calmly know where those things are, to research and be on top of it, I couldn't ask for a better partner. We're constantly shouting over cubicle, not shouting, but giving each other things over a cubicle wall. Hey, what about this? What about that? We're always just looking. It's sometimes really hard. The optics of it, it's hard when those buses come out in the morning. We're not proud of hearing what's not running. And it's really utterly defeating to be moving that 1,000,000-piece puzzle and to have to make those calls to Jake in the morning. It really kills us. So I can't thank Dawn enough for everything through the pandemic, for everything getting us going each year. It's gotten smoother and smoother as we've gotten more in touch with everything. And I'm really excited because we even have good software coming on that will help us with some more bells and whistles for families and teachers. So I really want to thank Dawn as well for everything she does. It's a very unique role. She's also the person, if you're looking for someone in the city, she probably can find them. So I definitely want to thank her for those special set of skills.
Dawn also loves
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. The next item on the agenda is agenda item number 6, is to receive and potentially vote on a field trip request to Japan.
And we have Kobe Roy, who's a teacher at the high school, who has also been running the travel club. I think I'm saying that right. For as long as I can remember. Kobe's been here for a while. So come on, Kobe, and if you wouldn't mind sharing the proposed trip and supporting documentation with that.
Okay. Good evening, Superintendent and members of the board. Sorry, I'm nervous. I haven't done this in a couple of years. I run the travel club at Lewiston High School. Pretty much every year we try to take a group of students somewhere, someplace in the world. The last couple of years we haven't been able to do it, and this is really our first time since pandemic to really try and get back out there. The trip I'm seeking to get your approval on today is a trip to Japan. As of right now, we have about 20 travelers signed up for the trip. It's scheduled to go in April, specifically on the school break. It is a 10-day trip, and we're very excited about it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or just talk about the trip, whatever you guys are really seeking from me to get the approval. Yes.
Thank you. I was curious, in looking at your proposal, the cost is $4,500 per student.
Yes.
How is that going to be funded?
The students fund it themselves. This isn't impacting the school's budget in any way, shape, or form. We plan these trips at least 2 years in advance, and we talk to the kids about what are ways to raise money. We talk about getting part-time jobs, different methods of acquiring funds for this, but we really just provide the opportunity if they'd like to go. It isn't a mandated trip by any stretch. It doesn't have class credit attached to it. We just want to provide the opportunity that if you would like to travel, here's a safe way with a reputable company to go about doing that.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if you've traveled lately, but flying is awful. So my question is, does the company, let's just say you're traveling, you have 4 connections and one of your connections gets canceled because there's no pilot or there's nobody to run the gate or whatever. Who takes care of that planning, like once that happens? Because it happens a lot. I flew over the weekend and I had delays, I had cancellations, I had a bunch of things, and that's literally flying from Portland to JFK.
Yes.
Let alone like across the country.
Or the planet. It's a very real concern. The company that we work for schedules all our flights. I'll get the flight information as we get much closer, but there's a pretty comprehensive insurance plan that covers any delays in flights or missed connections or anything like that. So far as I'm aware, for it, anything that goes on with the flight, the company really takes point on that. Hypothetically, if there was an issue in the airport where we needed to change a flight or whatnot, I would be the point person on the ground working with the company and the airport to try and figure something out. We've never had a situation like this before, but you're right, it is fairly unprecedented in what airports are like nowadays. I hope everything goes fine with it, considering most likely we'll be flying from Boston to Ohio to, I believe the last time I talked to them, the option was most likely Vancouver, and then from Vancouver to Tokyo. So those flights get longer each time, and hopefully there's no delays for that.
And then, sorry, you have like a point person that you would call, like
Yes.
you have a contact person. And so what's the instance if, let's say the flight does get canceled? The students are camping out in the airport, you're getting a hotel. What's the protocol for that sort of?
Depending on how long we would be there, it would be staying in the airport for a couple extra hours. We've had, I think the longest delay I've ever had on one of these trips was like a half hour, but I imagine we'd be staying in the airport if it was a reasonable connection, but they've comped hotels, they've figured out that sort of thing. If it was necessary to go to a hotel at that point. I know with international travel, that gets a little more complicated about leaving the airport, leaving the international section, customs gets involved. But if you want more specific answer to that, I'd be happy to forward them if I can talk to my rep at a later date and let you guys know. No problem.
Krista Bopalon.
Thank you. What other trips have you gone on with the travel club?
I have been to Italy, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, France. We'll be going to Spain in November for a training. I've been to Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Costa Rica. We've done mostly Northwestern Europe. This is probably I apologize. This is by far our most ambitious trip. We're hoping to get to Japan and really have that as a nice feather in our cap to grow the program into the future.
What is the student chaperone ratio?
The company mandates 7 to 1. At that point, we have 5 adults on the trip right now. There's 2 directly with the school involved, but there's a couple parents traveling with us as well.
Ms. Eames?
So I have been involved in study abroad programs quite a bit as a college teacher, not a high school. I'd like to know what you know about the track record of this particular group, because they vary tremendously. As I say, I've taken students abroad, but I've also been involved in these studying, checking out, inspecting these programs in the past. I did a tour of East Africa, checking out various programs that we've been sending students on for years. And one of them was dreadful and really dangerous and shocking. And all those years they've been sending people to them and they had a good reputation until you're there and see. So I would like, having said all that, I would like to know what you know about this
Explorica, yes.
Yeah.
This is our first time working with Explorica. The last several years, we've worked with EF Education First tours, and they were wonderful until they weren't. We had some pretty substantial problems as far as I was concerned with the pandemic and their handling of it. I've talked with teachers in the area. I've talked with several people about this company's reputation, how the trips went and everything, and I've heard nothing but good things. And we're trying something out new because we couldn't rely on the other company, and I've had nothing but good feelings from them. They've been incredibly helpful this whole journey, this last year, getting it set up. We're working on getting next year's trip set up already. They've been very helpful and responsive. And that's what I have to work on right now for it. I'm going on a training trip with them in a month to Madrid, and I'll have a little bit more information from there. But so far, the people in, the community of schools around us that I've called and talked to about it had a similar situation. They left EF. They're now working with Explorica, and I've heard nothing but positive things so far. So again, I hope it goes well and I can speak more to it in the future.
Thank you. Some of the other ones I visited were great. So, but there was the one that was not.
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. I appreciate you and the question being brought up about the chaperones, because in the original proposal we have, it says two chaperones to 18 children. My question is the tour director with you at all times? From reading this quickly, and I wish we would have had a little more time. Again, I'm sorry to bring that up, but we got this afternoon, and there's 17 pages on one part and 16 pages on another, and I would have preferred to been able to look at it a little closer, but I appreciate seeing what we have here so far, what I've read. Is they're with you all the time, this tour director?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can speak more to that if you'd like a little bit more of a detailed
Please.
description. Yeah. And I will start off by saying I apologize in the lateness of getting this. I only found out about this meeting on Friday, and I tried to get as much stuff as I could on time. And I know it's a busy machine with you guys and trying to get this company as well to get everything on a Friday evening was a little challenging. But the tour director is with us the vast majority of the trip. They're with us in the hotel. They're with us at the sites. They're they're on the buses with us. They're a guide. Students really get to know them on a first name basis for it. They're really wonderful. I've had nothing but positive experiences on all my trips thus far. The only time they are not directly with us is when they are setting up the next activity for us to go. So let's say we go to Tokyo. They will set us up with a local guide who will take us around the area, see some sites, give some educational instruction on things, while the tour director might step away for 15 minutes, half an hour to make sure our next activity is all set up. These companies, it's really fantastic what they do. They get everything set up behind the scenes. They wait in lines for us. It's really a sentient fast pass in a sense, and a lot of times, but they're really, truly wonderful. They speak the language and they're experts on what they do.
Thank you. So I appreciate, again, all of this information sent. I intend on reading it more, but I have to say, one of the biggest parts of being in high school was my trip that I took. We went to Europe and we went to Scotland, and it was incredible. And I know it's scary. It's scary for parents to do that, but the experience that the students get out of this is absolutely incredible. I was actually lucky enough to also do a trip to Washington, D.C. for 3 weeks. So I encourage anything like this, and I would just say that I hope we can do more in the future, and that after you have this trip, please let us know how this company works, and hopefully we can do more. And I would also like to encourage that if there are any students that can't afford that exorbitant cost, which a lot of us probably couldn't afford, if there's any way that we could help out a student that was really interested, that did, studies in Asian culture or did something to the effect of where they were going, if there's a way that we could maybe help. Because that may be very beneficial to a student that was studying Japanese or studying, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Thank
Um,
you.
If I may, speaking to the price a little bit, the price for the original trip was about $3,400, which covers quite a bit of stuff. It has meals on the trip, it has the hotels, it has the travel, it really has everything with it. The reason why it's jumped up so much is the group of students and parents that I have going on the trip unanimously voted to do an extension. So this trip is longer in a sense than a lot of the other trips. There was an option to extend it about 2.5 days to go to both Hiroshima and Miyajima Island at the end of it. And of the 20 people on the trip, everybody said, yeah, we're definitely doing this. So they opted to do that. And that did bump the cost up quite significantly because of hotels, meals, and we're taking a bullet train to get there as well. So there's a whole in domestic travel thing that's going there as well. What I found with the trips is any major industrial travel that goes, whether it's taking a bullet train or flying from one corner of Brazil to the other, it adds a significant element to the price for it. And that's really why the jump is. Furthermore, the company also, and I do like this more than with the previous company, they do offer a financial aid program if students would like to pursue that as well.
Ms. Eames.
I was happy to hear that last bit about financial aid. I was wondering if the fundraising effort is a group fundraising effort or if it's an individualistic fundraising effort. Given that Japan is a collectivist kind of society, it would make more sense for it to be a group fundraising effort.
Is a great question. Historically, we have tried fundraisers in the past to mixed success for it because we typically are trying to go for fundraisers that benefit the individual for it to usually get them more spending money or to help them out with it. It hasn't always been the most successful element of it. We've had some students have very good success. I think the highest we ever had a student raise was like $2,000 for their trip, but a lot of students don't take advantage of it if the opportunities are provided. And for the teachers themselves, there's a huge financial cost upfront to acquire the materials for these fundraisers in most cases, which has not been repaid in most sense. Mr. Levesque had tried this previously. He spent quite a bit of his own money to get movie passes. I'm sure you've all seen them, and he ended up eating like 90% of that because students didn't participate in it because they're not required to. And as far as a group participation on the fundraiser we go, we have students enrolling over that 2-year period. So we've gone with the individual basis because if someone joins, at the 11th hour, it wouldn't really sit well with the rest of the students who did do all the fundraising opportunities. But it is an interesting conversation to have. I always tell the students involved and the parents, if you would like to do fundraising opportunities, I'm more than happy to provide them. But if there's no interest in them, I'm not going to pursue it as much. Yes.
Again, let me repeat, a cultural lesson.
Yes.
Americans think individualistically, but they're going to a place that doesn't. And I think maybe there would be a great learning opportunity by forcing the issue, not necessarily with movie passes and wrapping paper, but some other kind of sharing of the effort. So it could be that somebody who has more money gives money to somebody who doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Beauclair.
Thank you. At the former school that I taught in pre-COVID, there was a trip to Europe from not this company that, as you said, fell apart. What could happen did happen, from temporarily losing a student to a person getting sick overseas is not a fun thing. That, quite frankly, makes me worried. I hold my breath when we send a student and chaperone to downstate to kayak. It's over. The ambitiousness of this, and it's probably more of a reflection of my personality, it worries me, and I need to state that. Thank you.
No problem. Would you like me to speak direct? Yeah. As part of our insurance plan that we have, it covers quite a lot of medical things as well for it. On previous trips, we've had no major instance with medical problems. I think the most severe thing we had was sunburns in Costa Rica, and the company was incredibly helpful with that. The tour directors are there to make sure we have the best possible trip, and they've been sent out to pharmacies for this, that, and the other before. Oh, I forgot my toothbrush. I go get this, or I need some type of medication for that. We've had that before. Additionally, the school is very strict with its medical guidelines. I have all the information that the students and their families provide. They go in a nice binder, and I take it with me everywhere we go on the trip. So any emergencies that come up, I have all that information directly on hand for it. Hypothetically, if there was a situation where a student was required to go to the hospital, I would be going there directly with them. The same thing goes for any problems with airport or customs or, heaven forbid, the embassy. That's part of my job on the trip, is to be the point of contact for that. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Ms. Whitlow.
So I was glad to see that the risk binder came through. But I do see on the form,
Mhm.
associated risks says all risks associated with international travel.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm curious if do we know if there's anyone that will be going on this trip that maybe they would need some translation for a slip, because permission slip or something of that nature, because I'm sure that the binder that we received is not, and maybe it is in different languages.
Yeah.
I don't know. So if you could tell us about that.
At this point, I've had no one express any desire for anything outside of English for this, but of course, we'd be more than happy to provide that as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
did I answer?
Do you know if the company, whatever it is again, I'm sorry.
Explore it.
Yes. Do you know if they provide any translated forms?
believe they do.
They must if they're
Yeah, I mean,
international.
yeah, they have a hotline number that we can call that
Oh.
has, oh my gosh, thousands of people working, it seems, that take phone calls there. The company's really broken into two different divisions. There's people working domestically to get the trips going, but there's this massive support network for people on trip. Students are given, in the past, what we've done is we've had wristbands with the company's hotline number, like heaven forbid you got separated or any kind of situation came up. They're right there as a point of contact to reach out to just about everybody, especially if any security issues came up. So they have a whole network in country to help with this as well. But yes, I'm going out on a limb and assuming that there's many translation options available.
Thank you again. Assure me that students will be aware of passport and customs regulations, and we won't have to worry about a diplomatic incident.
A big part of this group is a club in name. We don't meet every single week, but as we get closer to the trip, we have more regular meetings where we talk about, okay, what to pack, getting your passport. I've already sent out many emails like, hey, if you don't have your passport, you really need to get it. Hey, you need to have it by this date or else it's going to be a serious problem. No nicknames on the passport. We're not getting stuck in customs. There's a whole teaching element of this that goes slowly but surely as we get closer to the date. We'll even have an entire, evening where we're talking about things to expect culturally as well. But we have had no issues in the airport thus far, and we've had no international issues either, which is lovely.
Ms. Medina.
Hi. So first of all, this is a really, really cool opportunity. I think it's amazing. I am curious to know how are the students and families made aware of this opportunity? Because I heard about it through my daughter because her friend's going, but before that or after that, I haven't heard anything. So just curious.
We do advertising at the school. We try and plan 2 years in advance. Currently, right now, I'm working with a company to plan a 2024 trip. I'll make a decision with what that trip's going to be. I'll put advertisements up around the building. There'll be announcements for the meeting actually to come up. I'll have a student meeting where I pretty much run them through the exciting part of it. Like, oh, this is what we're going on for the trip. Here's the itinerary. We're going to do this. We're going to see that. We'll take a picture of this. And I really get them involved with getting their parents to a parent meeting, which does do the same thing, but it gets into more of the nitty gritty serious stuff like insurance, travel, what a hotel's like, and all the other things that go with it. There have been advertisements up in the school for over a year now for this trip. So they are there. Sometimes students are, a little bit unaware of these things. We had an announcement the other week for, hey, come by Mr. Roy's room and tell me where you'd be interested in going. And I did not have a great turnout for that. But I routinely have students come by asking, when is that meeting going to be? So it's one of the things that usually happens in a high school setting is the best way I can say it. Yes.
So I was curious to know also, like, say a student is enrolled to go on this trip, but their grades aren't good or they're getting in trouble for behavior stuff in school. Does that, like, who's eligible? How does that You know what I'm saying?
We don't have a specific eligibility policy like a sports team or any other type of club would have. You don't have to meet a minimum GPA or anything to get involved in this trip. Anyone who wants to go and is willing to, participate in going to it with paying for their own trip and whatnot is allowed to go. That's not to say we haven't had conversations with students from time to time about potential situations we might see coming up. We've never had any serious disciplinary situation happen on one of the trips. We do a really good job making sure that students and parents are very well aware that this is almost a zero tolerance kind of thing. If anything happens on trip where you are really getting in the way of everybody else enjoying the trip, you're not showing up on time, or you're flagrantly violating the trips rules or school policy for it, very realistically, it could be you're going back, and that's on you to get back. Like, not saying I'm going to throw a kid in the airport and say good luck. I go to the airport with them hypothetically, and I would make sure they get on a plane to go back. But we have never even remotely come close to anything like that. It's a nightmare scenario.
I'm going to say it again. One meeting on culture, I don't think that's quite adequate. It seems like the point of travel is to learn about the other way of being, not just to see a monument. So I would encourage you to figure out who around here could enlighten the students on Japanese culture. And I don't want to volunteer my colleagues, but Bates College has such a program. So there are people who teach Japanese culture there. So I think maybe some kind of deal could be brokered there.
Yeah, sounds like an excellent
Thank
idea.
you.
Anyone else? Mr. Superintendent.
So I'll be quick, and I don't know if it was text, email, phone call, or all of the above, but on one of the last trips you went on, there was a fire, a pretty significant fire, and I knew it was part of your itinerary, and you were very quick to let me know that all kids were accounted for. You had left that space, actually, I think the day prior or hours prior, and very responsive and connected even back to home, even when he was abroad with all the kids, and just communication, because there was an event that was beyond their control, but it went fine. But still, the communication was very comforting, I think, for those back here as the principal of the high school at the time. So thank you.
Yeah, we were not in Notre Dame.
Anything else? I would need a motion from someone to approve the trip to move forward.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Bowden. Is there a second? By Ms. Parks? Is there discussion? Mr. Beaupont?
I need you to know that I will be voting against this. I have to go with my gut. If there were to be a trip, someone like you that has the experience would ameliorate it, but I just have this worry of the many connections, the many things going on. So please don't take it personally against you or your club. I just have to feel true to myself on this. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to say that I'll be voting in favor of it. You only live once. These kids want to go. They raise the money. The parents give permission. I'm all for it. Go enjoy yourselves. Experience something new.
Anyone else? So there's a motion to approve this this trip to Japan. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? It's 2. Motion passes 7-2. Hopefully, when you come back, it'll be glowing reports. And we wish you all the best. And it will be definitely an exciting experience for the kids that do go. So
Thank
good
you.
luck. The next item on the agenda is to receive and potentially vote on the use of swabs to detect cannabis. Mr. Superintendent.
So I sent out a memo to go along with this, but really the core to this is if there is probable cause, if there's a situation, primarily in our upper grades, where administration and or SRO believe that someone is involved with and or using cannabis at school, they can swab to do a check. And so if this is allowed, again, it would be with reasonable cause. It's like a cotton swab. You can wipe it on things, then you run it through the test strip. And if it lights up red, it means it's positive. And if it does not, it means it's not present. We wouldn't use these rampantly by any stretch. And actually our high school SRO approached me with this question and would like to have this as a tool available to him and to others in our schools. And I thought this kind of thing would probably be best to go through the committee to use swabs for cannabis, again, with probable cause. So I wanted to just bring that to you, and I brought some samples if you want to see one. And just have the conversation.
Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. So where would we be swabbing? Like in somebody's mouth, on somebody's hands, on their clothing?
Yeah, it's my understanding it's made more for external things. So it could be hands, clothing, a backpack, things like that. But you can also swab items. So you could swab a cookie, a gummy, those kinds of things. And it would tell you if that was a gummy bear or a cannabis gummy bear.
So that's kind of what I thought. It's like a surface type thing. So I have to pose the question, since, marijuana is rampant now all over the city, every street corner you go by, plenty of people grow legally. It's one of those things where a student could potentially have cannabis on their hands or on their clothing from home. How do you know that they didn't like bring that from home, and they didn't use it? You know what I'm saying? Like how do you differentiate with a swab where it's actually coming from?
Yeah, I think that would just be part of the investigative process if there's a reason to look into something. But I think it's a good point. It could be picked up elsewhere. But I think, again, the SRO reached out and said that this could be a very good tool in the effort to combat this. It also picks up on like use of vapes and things like that from a contact piece. So they're just looking for tools to try to combat the use of cannabis. And I wouldn't say that it's a rampant issue. It was just, I didn't even know these swabs existed. I think it's a newer technology, at least in my mind, for general use. And when the SRO reached out, I thought it couldn't hurt to have one more tool available if a situation arose and we needed to narrow that down. But I can see the concern. That's definitely why I wanted to make sure it came to you before it's put to use.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you. So two kind of questions. What is probable cause, and who will be the people that will be determining whether probable cause is needed or not? I mean, is a teacher going to say, go to you or an SRO or someone or admin or someone and say, I believe this is happening, and then they make the call? Can everybody in the building just make the call? How does that work? Like, what's the process there?
So there's statute that guides this. Law enforcement has a level of probable cause. School officials have, it's actually a different level. It's a lesser than probable cause. But it would be a judgment call of an administrator. And I could think of some other examples of things that we've worked through in the past. We had a student who we believe to be smoking a joint out the back door right before school started, and got rid of what was left and went to class, and he showed up seemingly under the influence and had a smell to him that was at least traceable. That led to a probable cause. And when we went through the process with the student and doing a search, we were not able to find things, and it kind of left us as administrators and SRO at a loss, because without any kind of evidence of anything, it could just be denied. And so this would be a tool that maybe in that case, if we had such a thing, that we would have done that on a hand or on clothing to say it's present. It doesn't mean where it came from per se, but it's one more piece of evidence if something like that occurs. Other cases I could see it. We've had issues like at a dance. This was years and years ago, Again, I'm using my own examples because I know them to be real, where a student had some gummies and they were being passed out. And we had no idea if it was a gummy bear, if it was sitting in alcohol soaked, which was a thing at the time, or if it was cannabis or CBD or other chemicals that can be consumed. And so this would allow you to say, I'll swab that gummy and we know the answer. Again, it would be those kinds of situations. I don't see this being a rampantly used thing if it's approved.
Mr. Beaumont.
Thank you. I share Ms. Bowden's observation on the trickle down effect of marijuana. If you were to ask any teacher that greets students in the morning, he or she would certainly attest to that as well. I would be totally in support of this as long as there was some assurance of the student civil rights being upheld. I don't know if we should contact the ACLU on that, but I would want all our bases covered, especially in the issue of probable cause. Thank you.
I think I have some of the similar concerns as Ms. Bowden as far as how it'll be used. I think that if somebody's found using a vape and there's reason it smells like marijuana, or if they have an edible on them, testing those tangible items, I think I would be comfortable with. But as far as like just general surface without guidelines, testing a backpack, testing hands, testing clothing, I feel like that exposure could come from anywhere, unless the person was observed smoking right in front of them. I think I want to do a little bit more research. I don't think at this time I'd be in support of it just because I feel like it's way too open and we would need like a very specific policy around it. But yeah, I'm just concerned with how it would be used, how it would be utilized.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So I'm going to concur, especially with the last statements that were just made. I cannot support this without a policy in place. I feel that there are too many opportunities. Our state is allowable for medical marijuana. There are many people that use oils and creams for illnesses, for muscle pain, the examples are extensive, and there may be many students who have grandparents, parents, aunts and uncles that have that. And to think that somebody could harmlessly be using a cream, and I'm just saying, putting this as an example, and then put the lunch in, Meme put the lunch in the bag and she used the cream that morning, and that student could get in trouble for something that is honestly, I feel, harmless. But until we have a policy in place, we don't know how that would exactly work. I can understand a situation where a student is, honestly, if a student comes in and they're reeking of marijuana and they just chucked it before they walk through the door, I don't know that you even need that. That right there is the probable cause. I don't see why an administrator or a teacher can't say, we're going down to the office like they did back in my day when kids were coming up from the woods through Franklin pasture. Honestly, I'm just being honest here. So, I have grave concerns about this. I have grave concerns about the civil rights of our students with something like this. I can understand where the SRO is coming from, but I would need to see a lot more and get a lot more information. I tried to do some quick researches this weekend on this Swab Tech company. They said they have about 1,000 schools currently using the product across the country. 1,000 schools across the country is not a lot of schools when you consider across the country. I believe that they were in a couple of states that don't even have legal marijuana for medical use. So I would be concerned with the ACLU. I would be concerned with all of those issues. And I can't support just passing something like this tonight without more information and a policy. Thank you.
Ms. Eames.
Two more technical things. Can it differentiate between CBD and THC? Sorry, I didn't do my homework. Yeah. Is that possible? Is that the technology?
I don't know that this swab would differentiate.
So we
between
need
the
to
two.
know that.
Um,
And then
yeah.
I'm curious,
No,
is it
no,
expensive?
I guess
Is it cheap?
it doesn't differentiate between
Oh,
the two.
it
is what
does
I'm saying.
not. Okay. Oh, that's a problem. And then is it costly? It's just another question.
Yeah, it's not overly expensive
Okay.
to have, and I believe they have a reasonable shelf life. And again, I don't think they'd be used that often. It would just be a tool. But I think language around a policy could be
Yeah.
something worth talking about.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. So I just want to say that, I believe it was Ashley that brought up a future agenda item on tackling like drug use in our schools. And I do think that's important. It's no secret. I have a high schooler and a middle schooler, and I hear all about, people going to the bathroom, locking themselves in. They're smoking in there, vaping in there, doing whatever, skipping class. And I do think it's super important that we tackle that issue and try to find a way to stop it. I just don't think a cannabis swab is the answer to that problem. And I'm having a hard time with, there's just too many logistics that need to be answered with this. So I appreciate you bringing it forward, and I do appreciate the SRO trying to find a solution. I just don't think this is the solution to the problem that we have at our high school.
Ms. Parks.
Following up on Ms. Eames' question, the website lists that this test, I just looked up that same test, tests for THC, CBC, CBD, CBN, marijuana, industrial hemp, cannabinoids, hashish, and ganja. So there'd be no way of telling what it is positive for. I know that there's a line of Converse that are made out of hemp. So would those test positive with this test? If a kid was wearing those shoes, I just think that it's too broad right now.
Ms. Medina.
I just wanted to respond to what Ms. Bowden said. Yes, it was me that brought that up last time, and I do think it needs to be addressed. And actually, when I saw this, I was like, this isn't quite what I had in mind. I wasn't sure if this is what it was about, but I mean, I do think it's important to address. But I mean, a lot like what everybody else said, if we can differentiate, guys, I can't say it, I'm sorry. Then I think that's a problem. And I know people that do use CBD for things like Crohn's and headaches and things like that. So I just think that, I think we need to have another plan. And I'd like to hear from the public and parents.
Mr. Beauplan.
Yeah, I'd like to remind the members of the committee that this isn't random testing. It's not every seventh kid out of 10 that comes through, let's pluck him. There needs to be probable cause. There is an odor. There is a behavior. It needs to be explored. So I still think it's a worthy venture.
Anyone else?
I guess I'd be curious if the committee wants to send this to a policy subcommittee or just hold off on this at this time.
I think since it's an agenda item, I'd ask for a motion. If there is no motion and no second, then I guess it would just fail and it would become a future item if we want to bring it back. So I guess Ms. Scott.
I'd like to hear if there's anybody in the public. There's anybody in the public tonight that would like to weigh in on this. And before, my personal opinion is before it goes to a policy committee, I would want to hear from parents and hear what the rest of the community was thinking. Thank you.
I can open it to the public. Comment?
Jay Rich, I am an ELL teacher at McMahon and also the president of the Lewiston Education Association. I did want to echo some things member Bowden, Parks, Eames, and Scott had said about our students' civil rights. There was a Supreme Court case in 2002 that allowed for random drug testing of our student athletes. And I know that we're also talking about this needing probable cause, but I worry about things such as it picking up things like hemp that are not, things that make you high. So I appreciate those comments, and I think it needs a better look. Maybe a policy would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Beauplan.
I respect Ms. Rich's point of view and the members of the committee, but I fail to see how wearing sneakers out of hemp or holding hemp would give a probable cause to the odor, and the other signs that are more obvious. So that's my point. Thank you.
Ms. Parks,
I think that a lot of adults are partaking in marijuana at home and maybe in their car, maybe while they're driving their kid to school. I think it's very commonly used now. I smell it every day that I'm driving down the road. Although that is still operating under the influence, I think lots of people do it anyways. And so I could potentially see a situation where a kid is getting dropped off to school and he walks in the building and the smell is on him because his parents were smoking. And then that would look like probable cause, but then a kid's getting in trouble for something that they haven't done. That's just a situation that I could see possibly happening.
Ms. Whitlow.
Currently, if a student smells like marijuana, that's probable cause for administrator or teacher to say something or investigate, right? I mean, are people getting searched now? Okay, so we still have that probable cause. It's already, actions are being taken. So I'm not sure that I'm opposed to the swab, but I also do think there needs to be policy, and we really need to think about this a lot more thoroughly.
Yeah, so you're right. Right now, we do have the ability, again, with cause, and we are very thoughtful about that, to search students. And we also do Nystagmus tests, which is it's a technique with a pen or a pencil, I should say, and you follow it with your eyes. And if you're under a certain amount of influence, your eyes can bounce as an indicator of being under the influence. But there's also certain medications that are taken appropriately by students that can cause a similar effect. And so that's a tool that's in place now, but again, it has that margin of what else might be going on here. So we always have to investigate that further.
Anyone else? Ms. Ames.
I do have some ignorance about what would be the consequences if they were found to have imbibed. So what would be the consequences of a positive test? Thank you.
So initially, consequences actually start small, and we have a substance use prevention counselor that we would connect them with, and hopefully they would engage in that process. We have had some over the years. Again, I'm speaking from my own experience, so it's a couple of years removed now, where we've had students who had more with them than appropriate for school settings, and those ended up, pardon me, with the school committee, to review different cases. But usually, if a student is found to be under that influence at school, there is a process, and it does involve supports.
Mr. Boplan.
Thank you. Referring to Mrs. Park's scenario, once again, it seems the student would be taken aside by the SRO and the administrator to talk about it rather than just be thrown to drug court. Or what would happen along that line? The student can do one of two things: tell the truth, and his parents have to deal with that. Or if he chooses to protect his family and cop to it, well, there's a lesson to be learned there. I have seen the result of lethargy in the classroom. I have seen diminished scores. I've seen poor attitudes. I've seen students not reaching their potential, be it in co-curricular, extracurricular, or curricula. And I see this as a device that will not stop, but hinder, shall we say, or lessen the use of marijuana in our schools.
Okay. There's a motion. There is no motion on the table at this point. Make a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion. Well, thank you. I make a motion that we vote positively on the use of swabs to detect cannabis. If anybody wants to clean that up, feel free. Thank you.
Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion will fail. I would think that this is potentially something that we should consider in the future in considering Miss Medina's request to help with the drug issues that we have. Hopefully this maybe come back to us as a potential piece of it once we have better policy. So. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 8. This is a report for a grant proposal to upgrade shop spaces.
So I wanted to share this with you, both aligned to policy, but also I think is a good potential or possibility for our schools. Director Callahan couldn't be here tonight. He's not feeling so great, he was going to be here in person, and that's where the memo came from this afternoon. He was going to be here in person and was not feeling well enough to attend. I told him I would step in for him if he could give me some language, and so he provided that memo in your packet. But any grant submittals of this size are supposed to go before the school committee. And so this is a $430,000 grant proposal, and it's for CTE or for LRTC's infrastructure. The focus of this is electrical panels and also upgrading their dust collection system. Their panels in the shop spaces are original to the construction. And if they burn through a fuse or pop a breaker, just getting the backups can be weeks. So it can actually cause the shop to go down. The bus bars are old. Some of the newer equipment requires, I would say, what they call cleaner energy flow. There's actually a phrase called dirty power, I think it is, which means it doesn't flow and regulate as it should. And so this can actually interfere with some of the technical equipment that they use, can cause it to randomly restart or shut down and things like that. So in an effort to upgrade the facilities and bring it up to modern structures, Rob and his team have put together this grant proposal for $430,000. So we just wanted to share that with you so you were aware. And yeah.
Ms. Bowden.
Thanks. Just a quick question. I always wonder when I see grant applications, is there going to be any costs overflow after the grant that we're going to have to sustain as a district?
So this is a structural grant. So no, it doesn't involve acquiring staff or maintaining them or future costs. One thing that might come back is if they get this 430, does it provide us an opportunity to maybe do some other things while we have folks in doing that kind of work? But we would bring that before you as part of the budgeting process.
Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So I appreciate you answering that because I was a little concerned about that as well. But in reading the memo, I mean, we're replacing equipment from 1971. I think this is something, I mean, we're 2022 here. This needs to be replaced. And I appreciate the director going forward to look for a grant like this because it's substantially helping some of these areas. The one part I was questioning, though, was the bottom paragraph with the statement that says state DOE may require local award recipients to approve the receipt of awarded grant funds through referendum. Is that because of the amount of the grant being so high? And what would be the process there?
So my understanding is this would be treated as a revenue. And so because we're a municipality and we already have a referendum on our budget and it goes through the school committee of the city and process, if we're awarded this grant, it would be included in our revenue sheets. So this actually would by default end up being voted on. Not all school districts have the same kinds of structures. So upgrades of this size, they want to make sure the community is aware. So, and I believe that's why it sits in our policy that something of this size comes here because of our structures with the referendum.
But with that referendum, there is a guarantee that the money would be used for the purpose that the grant was obtained for, correct? Not that the community could decide that we got this grant, we can use it for something else on the budget.
Correct. It's a specific revenue stream. And so it'd be similar to the Article 3 from a revenue perspective, not the expenditures, but Article 3 is specifically for LRTC. And so when we do our budget process, it would be itemized as such. But that's an excellent point that someone with a different intention or looking to find a savings or say, we could use this $430,000 to pay for benefits. This by structure, by grant proposal and your approval and referendum through our budget process would not allow for that. they would specifically have to be used for this grant, if it's approved or given.
Anyone else on the committee with questions? Anyone in the public with questions or comments? Okay. I saw this the other day. Actually, the grant proposal required not only the superintendent but myself to sign off on this to make the grant proposal. I think it's the type of thing we need to be chasing after. 50-year-old building. The requirements for electronics gear, as most of you know, has changed drastically. And let's face it, just the environment in the shops is more difficult as far as electrical switch gear and stuff is concerned. So from a safety standpoint and from the idea of being able to keep the shops up and going, to me, this made perfect sense. And that dust collector is another 50-year-old piece of equipment that is, it's been nothing but problematic in recent years. So this is a great idea to try to upgrade this stuff. So I'm fully in support of this. There's really no motion required here. This is just informational. But I think it's great that Director Callahan is on top of this stuff, trying to go after it. So hopefully there's more opportunities out there. Okay. The next item, we have already moved to skip 9, 10, and 11 due to the late notice to the committee. Item 12 is report from the school committee chair. I did know about this particular grant proposal from Director Callahan. We are working on Mr. Grant, and the facilities committee is working on several different proposals that we're looking at. One is the JCI proposal, and there's another one from Siemens. But that stuff is all being worked on as we go ahead. So other than that, I don't have anything else to report at this time. Mr. Superintendent.
So a couple of things. One is we've talked to Siemens and the folks that have worked on the boiler plant at the middle school, and I wanted to see what the interest was from the committee. If we can find a date coming up to hold the school committee meeting at the middle school and maybe go down and take a look at the work that they've done, if that's something of interest. Okay. I'll check with them to make sure that's all on the up and up. They were finishing some pieces and but yeah, I'm thinking sooner than later so we can take a look as they turn them on for the colder season. And then while I have you, the pathway subcommittee is ready to get rolling, but I have in my notes 4 committee members, and I was trying to remember because I thought we had talked about 4 makes a quorum, and then someone whispered to me, I think it's 5. And so if it can be 4, I think what I had in my notes was member Bowden, member Eames, member Whitlow, and then the question was it Ms. Parks, Ms. Medina, or Ms. Hurd that also had mentioned the interest in, and the pathway is the graduation process. So I just wanted to make sure I had the right folks that I was inviting and I wasn't making a quorum.
I expressed interest, but I'm fine either way. If
Okay.
somebody else also expressed interest.
All right. No, I know, I feel like the 3 of you were definites in my recollection, but
I can be a part of that.
Graduation.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So look for invites on that. I'll be sending those out. All right, perfect. I also wanted to share that I have a meeting with our 2 new student reps Wednesday morning, so they should be at our next meeting. Hopefully they're available. And 2. So 1 returning, and then a second that is new to us, and they know about the commitment and they're seemingly ready to go. So I'll meet with them Wednesday morning to make sure they know our structure and have the calendar and all those kinds of things to orient them, and they should be here. Like I said, as I anticipate October 3rd, next Monday, unless they're not available for some reason.
I know that in the past I've mentioned of like, how can we get them involved more with what we do? I really think that we need to treat them just, not as at the same level as us, but I want them to really feel like they have a voice, not just a quick blurb at the end of the meeting and that's it. So they are our future leaders. So let's get them some more experience, I think.
I think that's a big piece for me too. That's what I wanted to meet with them about before they came to a regular meeting. I want to encourage them to really not just have voice, but amplify that voice and to be hearing things from the student body and bringing them here. That student experience, and clearly this committee has been very open and upfront the whole time about getting student voice and part of these meetings. So that is definitely the hope.
Next item on the agenda is report from City Council Rep, Ms. Scott.
Thank you. We did have a meeting last Tuesday. We had several items on the agenda. It seemed to be the night of automobile junkyard permit renewals. It comes in droves. There was I think 8 of them or something to that effect. So they come once a year. We also finished our work on the homeless shelter ordinance, and that was approved and passed, as well as the overlay district on where shelters can be located. We're also looking for more information from the planning board for more locations for a possible homeless shelter. We passed the ordinance on keeping of bees and keeping of chickens. We also had a resolve to support all of our Lewiston election officials, workers, and volunteers. And I also wanted to report that I met with the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council last week, and they are working on mental health issues this year as their subject. We are fortunate to have Member Parks join us and talk about her experience in the field and help the kids with moving forward on some of their ideas. They're looking for, like I had said before, artwork that pertains to mental health, but they're also looking at messaging and getting messages out there. These kids had a bunch of awesome ideas. They want to get messaging in the newspaper every day, maybe on the Facebook page that says this is the positive message of the day. We were all shocked that Jake had a Twitter, because Megan and I were sitting there and the kids were like, yeah, we look at Jake's Twitter all the time. And Megan and I went, Jake has a Twitter? We did not know. So, but they were excited about possibly using that as the message format of the day, where you're always messaging out about buses and stuff like that. Also on announcements. We encourage them that if they're going to do announcements at school, to make them age appropriate, elementary school level, middle school level, and high school, not to just focus on the high school, but to focus on all the kids and all the community. I did want to add there that I'm really glad to hear that we're getting our student reps back, because at the end of that meeting, I was approached by 2 students that are on the youth council that had a specific issue about the high school that they wanted to be addressed at this level. And I told them that I was hoping that in the future, when we have a student rep, that we're going to be having that dialogue happening with, and I think that that's a good place to have that dialogue. The youth council is students from freshman year to high school year. They've got a pretty good pulse on what's happening in our community and for their perspective and their age group. And I think that they would be a good liaison with the student reps to really continue that conversation and talk about the issues that are really prevalent to them and what's been moving forward, and helping each other in pushing those messages across in the projects that they're working on. So we do have a city council meeting next Tuesday, the 4th. I'm not quite sure everything that's on the agenda just yet, but I do want to give a special shout out to everybody that worked at the Dempsey Challenge this weekend. It was a phenomenal success. There was all kinds of participation, and I've heard nothing but great things. So bravo to all that worked on the Dempsey Challenge and getting it going again. I mean, we've had it before, but this was like back to the way it used to be a couple after before COVID. So that's a great thing. And we have more activities like that happening. Also, we have the last art walk of the season this coming Friday, downtown Lisbon Street. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Superintendent.
I know we don't have any students here, but I do want to give a student update. Kind of supplanting, I should have shared it in my part. We just finished homecoming week, which for the first time in many, many years, there was a homecoming dance a number of homecoming events throughout the week. The students did fantastic, lots of very good participation in different themed days at schools. Friday night, there was a game and that went well, even though it was cold and windy, like like standing in a wind tunnel. But it was a good time had by all. And I did not attend the dance Saturday night because I'm just not doing that. And I have a daughter that did attend, and that's why I'm not doing that. Okay. It's her time. And so I try to be respectful of that where I can. Nobody wants to see their dad there, especially if their dad's superintendent. But all the reports that I got back were that it went very well. I think it was good for our community. I think it was good for our economy because all of those kids made dinner plans. They went to the community, took pictures. Just a good event. It just felt so good to have that back, and we're very excited about it. Prior to the homecoming game on Friday night, there was a alumni dinner, which was supported by some local businesses, including Luigi's, who put up all the food. And then we did tours of the new wing. We took a picture on the stairway, which I'll share out. But it was wonderful to see people as early as the class of 55 on site and checking out the new space. It was really cool. And I think that will just grow and keep that fun event and that fun weekend for the kids. But went really well.
I just want to give a shout out to everybody that was involved in organizing, and especially the youth that were involved. They were really, really excited, and I heard in their words that it was lit. So that means that it was super cool and fun. So yeah.
Okay. The next lit, okay. Update from school subcommittees. Mr. Beaupron.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you if you weren't finished. We had our first meeting of the curriculum committee tonight, our inaugural meeting. Members Eames, Hurd, and myself, and it was led by Assistant Superintendent Paquette. We reviewed how curriculum is a three-stage, three-year process of identification, implementation, and assessment. We all stress the importance of financial literacy, that our kids need to, be able to put two and two together in the real world for work and rent and housing and stuff like that. I invite my fellow members to be color men on this, color persons. Anything, Ms. Eames or Ms. Hurd?
I'm just very excited to get this underway, so thank you.
And I'm sorry, we have three other meetings scheduled prior to school committee meetings, which I think is a very good time. And Assistant Superintendent Paquette is going to let us know the dates of the math meetings, and those of us that can attend all those all-day meetings will do so. Thank you.
Other subcommittees, negotiations, Ms. Whitlow?
Well, I was absent from the meetings due to illness past week or two. So I don't really have anything. If you want to go ahead and talk on that.
We actually seem to be making significant progress with the administrators. Ms. Bowden and I were there the other night, and along with Mr. Grant and Sue Williams, and we feel very, very good about the progress that we've made on that one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's once this one is settled, that's it for negotiations for at least the foreseeable future. We hope. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long season. It's been but we've made significant progress. We have the ed techs done, we have the teachers done, we have only the administrators left at this point. So feeling very good about how we've gotten to where we've gotten with all of the individual units as we've gone through. So Janet, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to speak to the fact that the people showing up to bargain with us have been great, open, there's been no issues. This has been pretty smooth. I was a little afraid when I joined this subcommittee. I'm not gonna lie, but it's been great. And we're on our final one with administrators, and it sounds like we could possibly be voting as early as next week on this. So, yeah.
Yeah, we do have one final one more negotiating session scheduled Thursday. And if we can do a final TA on that, we may be able to bring that administrator's contract back to you on the 3rd for approval. So that would be incredible if we could close that out. We'd be all done by the first week of October. Tanya?
You think that the administrative unit is able to get to vote on it before that?
What they proposed was that if on Thursday we could TA the whole thing, that on Friday they would have a district meeting right after school on Friday night. And if they approve, and then we could approve on Monday, and that would be done. As quick as that.
So we'd be able to get all that written up, Bill? All right, sounds good.
Yeah, I just want to say Bill and Sue have done so much work behind the scenes and so appreciative of everything that they've done as well.
You were fortunate you missed some of the early going, but these last several have gone remarkably well. And I feel really good. I think that the staff feels good about it. I know, huge shout out to Bill and to Sue and to Adam as well for all the work that they put in behind it. And I know that we couldn't do it without the support of the staff, but it's all good at this point. So other subcommittees. Policy or?
Yeah, I mean, we could quickly talk about policy. We ended up having a later meeting for policy in the week last week, and that was on Wednesday or Thursday. And obviously the ones that were on the agenda late today were the ones that we talked about. So I mean, that was good. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, you know what? Oh no, let me say for future agenda items, I'll come back to that one.
Okay, any other subcommittee reports? Seeing none, we'll jump down to school committee community announcements. I know, Ms. Parks.
Just because I get the emails every Sunday, I wanted to share that in this week's Lewiston Middle School newsletter, they're doing Principal Winslow is doing breakfast with the principal this Friday, the 30th at 7 a.m. And that's open to community members, parents to go in the morning and meet with the principal and have a conversation about whatever they want to talk about at Lewiston Middle School.
Ms. Bowden?
I just wanted to ask where you get that information from. I've never seen that, so I
Get
don't
it
know
in
where
an
you get
email on
newsletters from.
Sundays, and I get it in the Talking Points app.
Okay,
But I have to screenshot it in the Talking Points app because it doesn't zoom in and it's too small to read. So I screenshot it and then go to my other thing and then zoom in so I can read it. I don't know if that's just a me issue, but.
no. I guess I have a talking point issue, but we'll save that for another time. Thank you.
Other community announcements. No, Ms. Scott had said something about the art walk that this Friday.
It's the last one of the year too, this Friday. And I think that there's a creepy, spooky Halloween theme going on at several of the different venues. So it looks pretty exciting. So.
Anything else? Now we'll jump down to future agenda items. Ms. Parks.
I would just like to reiterate that I hope that the conversation around the cannabis test strips comes back. But I noticed while I was on that Swab Tech site that they also sell fentanyl test strips, which pick up fentanyl, amphetamines, and all opiates. So I think that if we're going to write policy around the cannabis test strips, I think it's a much higher risk that a student would be exposed to fentanyl or something that is a lot more dangerous. And so I would like, if we're going to have any test strips, I would like to have those, a discussion around that as well.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So I was approached by a few students at the high school who were fearful of bringing this subject up. And so I told them that I would bring the subject up. And that was around a place to pray in school. So I want to have a discussion about that conversation. And I just think it's important that whether we agree with it or not, if a student comes to you and says, we want to talk about this and nobody talks about this, then it is my responsibility to, as the adult in the room, to say, yeah, I'm going to bring it forward. And so I'd like us to have a discussion around praying in school. Thank you.
Ms. Whitlaw.
I'm shocked we don't have a place in our schools for that, for those who do like to pray.
I can get some information for the committee around that.
Yeah, I know that, religion in school, whatever, but nobody's preaching it to people. But if a space, I mean, we have spaces for mothers to nurse. I think that we should have these places. I don't know. I'm shocked. I'm sorry. I didn't realize we didn't have spaces like that.
Linda, do you think that it's a case of some of the students not knowing whether there is a space or that there really isn't space?
I don't know. I was just asked and it was 6 particular students that came up to me and said, they feel that nobody wants to talk about this and they're afraid to talk about it because of negativity that they've heard around the subject. And would I be willing to bring up the subject? So I'm bringing up the subject. Let's put it on the agenda and have the conversation. We're the adults in the room. Let's talk about it. And whether there isn't a space or whatever, I don't want to have that discussion tonight. I want to leave it open so that Jake can prepare and have us ready to have a real discussion around this. Thank you.
Well, the students certainly knew who to ask. Thank you for that, Linda. Anyone else? Ms. Whitlow.
Yeah, so it came to my attention this evening talking to another school board member that there's a possibility that some teachers might not realize what our policy is on homework, and that we may want to take a look at that and make sure all of our teachers know if they can or cannot give homework to students. So I'd like to take a look at that in possibly our next policy meeting. Let's just kind of like take a look at it, refresh ourselves on it, and make sure that all of our teachers know. And also, I just wanted to step back on the last agenda item for community announcements. Is LRTC having their open house this weekend? Do you know? I feel like I couldn't go to it because I was going to be away.
Yes, it is this
And then
weekend.
if anybody's ever been to their open house, it's amazing. You pay like a small fee and you can go in and try every single food that's in there. There's probably 40 tables of just food and it's so good. We go every year, so I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to be here this weekend for that, but October 1st, yeah, you should go to it.
Mr. Beaupont.
What is the time of that?
Saturday, October 1st, 10:30 a.m. Doors close at 12:30 p.m. $16 per person. Children 10 and under are free. Tickets available at the door. It's Green Ladle, yes. Presented by Culinary Arts and Hospitality Management students. Food truck, live music, desserts, raffles. Okay, I'll stop.
Just to be clear, it's the Green Ladle, not all of LRTC. We don't get to get down in the wood shop and play with the tools, so. That'd be where I'd end up, but that's. Any other future agenda items? Or for our community announcements? Okay. Next item on the agenda is to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter in accordance to 1 MRSA 4056A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So second,
Okay, whoa. Is it motion by Ms. Whitlow, second by Ms. Bowden? Any discussion? All in favor? So moved.
Be a lot of food. Yeah, you take.
Oh, yeah. Is that Saturday?